Happy Saturday, everybody. Meteorologist Hunter Forst here. Welcome to Hurricane Hub Live, where we track everything in the tropics. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing tonight. Luckily, Hurricane Erin is well on out of here. It moved through just the other day, leaving some effects down in the Outer Banks and here in Hampton Roads. We saw some tidal flooding, overwash, but luckily that storm is well on out of here. But we do have now our next named system out in the Atlantic. Take a look and say hello to Tropical Storm Fernand, I should say. Tropical Storm Fernand. You don't pronounce the D. It's a French name. I just recently learned that. I thought it was Fernand, but it is not. It is Fernand. So now we have a tropical storm here way out into the middle of the Atlantic. That's exactly what we like to see. It's a weak tropical storm. Winds at about 40 miles an hour, and it is 405 miles to the south-southeast of Bermuda. So it is very far away from the island there, and it's going to continue to stay far away, and it's just going to move right up the central Atlantic and get on out of here. So say hello and goodbye to Fernand. That's exactly what we like to see here in the tropics. A good old fish storm. Track the tropics, track the tropical storms as long as they stay out to sea. Now, it's expected to continue to stay a tropical storm, may not even become a hurricane over the next couple of days. By Sunday and Monday, winds up to 60 and then 70 miles per hour. And then, of course, as it gets further off towards the north, encounters some warmer or some cooler waters, I should say, and then more wind shear. And it's just not a favorable environment, becomes more subtropical than tropical. And then the rest is history. Fernand will be out of here. But again, it is very far away from Bermuda, and it's going to be no threat to land. Maybe, see some choppy waves out there, but overall things should be looking good. Here's a look at the tropical satellite here, and over the last couple of hours started to lose a little bit of that convection near that center of circulation as it continues to trek off towards the north. But as of the latest scan here on the satellite, seeing a little bit more of that convection starting to bubble up around that center. But overall, things, it's just fighting a little bit of shear around in this environment. So it's not the best area for the storm to survive. Maybe that's why it's not going to explode, into a hurricane over the next day or so, which is great news. But it's going to continue to move off towards the north. And right now we have no tropical storm watches or warnings up for the island of Bermuda. So again, it's going to stay well off towards the east. So things should be looking good here for the island. If you had any plans to head there, or, if you were taking a cruise to Bermuda over the next couple of days, I think you should be A-OK. So some great news there. As we take a look at the buoy reports around Fernand, nothing crazy, about 10 feet for those wave heights out near the center. Now compare that to Erin. We saw a buoy report of 45 feet near the center of Erin. So this is a much weaker storm, of course, and it'll strengthen a little bit, but it will be nowhere near like Hurricane Erin as it was making its way between Bermuda and the East Coast. But again, a much weaker storm, and that wind field of tropical storm force winds is tiny for this storm. I think the tropical storm force winds only go out about 100 miles or so, while Erin, it was about 400 miles. So again, it's a small, weak storm, and it'll continue to stay on the weaker side as it progresses off towards the north. So there's Fernand right now. And as we go further down to the south, we actually have another area we are watching. You probably remember this one over the last couple of days. Came off as a wave off of Africa just the other day. Pretty good odds of development when it first came off. And then day after day, those odds started to go down and down and down. It wasn't really a favorable environment for this storm to form. Now, earlier today, Invest 90L only had a 20% chance of developing over the next 2 to 7 days. So it went, from a pretty good chance of developing to really not great odds for this storm. So that was, great to see because, it's very far down to the south. It's heading off towards the west, towards the Caribbean. But as of the 8 o'clock update, those odds did increase from 20% up to 40%, which I'm not super surprised about because I was looking at the satellite earlier from today and I was like, I really feel like it's trying to get its act together. There's some convection trying to bubble up around its center. There's some wind shear, but not a whole lot. There's, of course, some warm water. So it's trying to get its act together. I'm not surprised the National Hurricane Center upped those chances from 20 to 40%, really just looking at the tropical satellite. Obviously, it's just more of a disorganized area of thunderstorms. There's no closed circulation. There's no tropical depression. But over the next 2 days or so, there's a chance, if it really tries hard, could you see a depression? Maybe so. About, medium chance, according to the National Hurricane Center. So we'll, of course, continue to keep a watch on that one. And these are what the spaghetti models are saying. It's going to continue off towards the west over the next couple of days, head towards the island, and then once it gets into the middle of the Caribbean, a lot of the models, of course, kind of take it all over. This is only until Tuesday. Now, up until Tuesday of the upcoming work week, it became more of an unfavorable environment for this to form. So it's kind of looking like it only has a couple of days to maybe try to get its act together before it enters the central Caribbean, and things don't really start to look good for it. Here's a look at the wind shear outlook over the next couple of days. You'll notice here's that area, Invest 99L, and right now there's not a whole lot of wind shear where that, the area of thunderstorms are. There's some more off towards the west and towards the north, but as it continues to progress off towards the west, it'll encounter some. And of course, wind shear acts to squash any of that development. As the storms try to grow, the wind shear just kind of shreds it apart. So you want to see wind shear in the tropics because that's a good sign that you're not going to see a storm, form or strengthen quickly. So as we get into Sunday, that area will continue off towards the islands and enter the Caribbean as we get into Monday and Tuesday. So not a whole lot of shear, but there's a good amount as we get into Monday. So that's going to help keep it, not explode, which is the good news. But there's not a whole lot of shear. We could say, yes, there's no way that this is going to form into a depression. There's warm water here. There is some shear. But, the National Hurricane Center now saying, maybe there is a chance. Now, maybe the environment will be a little bit more favorable that this area could form into a depression over the next week or so. Now, there's only a 40% chance, but still, just something to watch as we go throughout the next couple of days. Let's take a look at the European model. This is the vorticity. There's Invest 99L over there, and then we have Fernand over here. So you'll notice over the next couple of days, Fernand up and out of here, but there's a little bit of spin here with that storm. So European model, kind of being like, maybe we'll see something little forming there. But once it gets into Monday and Tuesday, it kind of squashes it and pushes it away, and not much coming out of that. So that's the good news. And then we get into next weekend, and what do you notice? Not a whole lot. Thumbs up. We're getting towards the peak of hurricane season, which is around September 10th. So when you're at the end of August and you're seeing vorticity like this on the Euro model, that's a good sign. Now, is it going to stay like that? I'm not saying it's going to stay like that for the rest of the season, but at least there's signs that we'll see a little bit of a break as we get towards the end of the month and into the start of September. We'll be getting into Labor Day, which is actually September 1st this year. So we have Labor Day weekend, the end of August, and then September 1st is Labor Day. So this is Tuesday, September 2nd, and not a whole lot to worry about out there in the tropics. So a little bit of a break after Fernand goes. I think after this system kind of diminishes over the next couple of days. Still something to watch. But of course, the Euro's not making a whole thing out of it. So that's what we like to see. Maybe something little over the next 2 days. But once we get past that, things are really on the up for now. So we just got to take things with a grain of salt. A little bit of a break is a great thing to see, especially during this time of the season. Of course, the peak is September 10th. Today is August 23rd. So, we're getting to the peak of that season. So when you have a little bit of a break here, during this time, It's always great news. And then the end of the season is, of course, November 30th. Here's a look at the Atlantic storms we've had so far. We've had Andrea, Barry, Chantel, Dexter, Aaron, and Fernand. And Aaron, the only hurricane of the season, and a major hurricane, Category 5 storm. I was just thinking in my head, I was like, I wonder, how many times or how many storms were the first hurricane of the season, but also became a Category 5. I'm going to think about it. I wasn't too sure about that one, but all of these storms have been a tropical storm, but Aaron was Cat 5 storm. Luckily didn't make landfall, but still saw some of those effects in the Outer Banks here in Hampton Roads up into New Jersey. They saw a lot of tidal flooding as well. Next name on the list will be Gabrielle, Umberto, Imelda, Jerry, and Karen. Hopefully we don't get that far, but of course you never know. All right, coming up on HHL, what's going on in the Eastern Pacific, but also we have some Hurricane Hub Live trivia. I have a good question for you. Maybe you guys can answer it, but we'll get back to that when we come back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to Hurricane Hub Live. I'm meteorologist Hunter Forst. We were just going over what was going on in the Atlantic. We have our newest Tropical Storm Fernand, and then another area we are watching with about a 40% chance of development. But let's take a look at the Eastern Pacific. What's going on with this area, with this ocean basin? Well, it's been an active start to their season, that's for sure. They were having storm after storm after storm, and then they were seeing a bit more of a break, which was great to see. And now we have an area we're watching out there right now. This is a tropical wave off the coast of Mexico, and there's a 50% chance of development over the next 2 days. And over the next week, good chance, about 70% chance we could see a tropical depression or a tropical storm forming here. But the good news is you'll notice the direction. It's going to move right on out to sea and then most likely weaken, because the further north you go here, especially around this region, you get much cooler water, and it's not sustainable for tropical systems. So as they enter and towards the north and the west, they enter that cooler water and they weaken rapidly. So hopefully that's exactly what we'll see here. We'll see if something forms, and of course, we'll keep you updated with that. Here's a look at the 2025 East Pacific storm names so far. So they've had a few hurricanes, a few tropical storms. They had Barbara, which was a Category 1 hurricane, so their second named storm, a Cat 1. They had Eric, which was a Cat 4, Flossie, Cat 3, Gale, which was a Cat 1. So they had 3 hurricanes in a row, Henriette and then Ivo. Next name on the list will be Juliet and then Kiko. Here's a look at our Hurricane Hub Live trivia. Let's take a look here. What is the 5-category scale used to classify hurricanes by wind speed called? Is it the enhanced Fujita scale, the EF scale, the Saffir-Simpson scale? Is it the Richter scale or the Beaufort scale? I'll have the answer for you on Hurricane Hub Live tomorrow, because we'll be back. We'll be back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and I want you to make sure you join us here for Hurricane Hub Live every day at 8 p.m. Have a great night.